Hi all, welcome to Public Cloud Design Tips and Tricks again. As a part of Azure Security, today I will be covering the part 3 of Azure Security. So what is the problem statement again? What are the practices available in Azure Cloud to secure the ecosystem? We have already discussed few of the topics in our previous security sessions, and today I am not going to cover any one of it actually, but rather I will try to cover some fundamentals on RBAC to get more into how it works more on a Azure resources level. Responsibility metrics we have already discussed in our previous session, so I'm not discussing it anymore. Now coming to the most fundamental things in Azure security is RBAC. Okay, so what is the RBAC? RBAC is a fine-grained operation mechanism that provides access to Azure resources. Now it has to deal with three aspects. What are those? Those are who has access to Azure resources, what they can do with those resources, and what areas they have to access to. So these are the three things basically RBAC deals with. For a few examples, like allow an F service or an application to update Azure SQL database, allow a DBA user to manage SQL database, allow an application gateway within Azure to get a certificate or fetch a certificate from a key vault as a secret manager, or allow a user to manage VNet in a resource group, or allow a user to manage virtual machine. So these are few examples where RBAC comes into picture. Now, the next topic is like what is a security principle and a security role. Okay. Now, a security principle in Azure is a physical object which represent either a user or a group or a service principal or a managed identity. Okay, so any one of them can be used as a security principle. Now, within managed identity, there are two kinds of identity. Again, we can define system managed identity and user managed identity. Now, what is a system managed identity? It is an identity which LCM or the lifecycle management is always attached to a Azure resource. Okay, whereas user managed identity is always an Azure resource itself. Okay, so what is the difference? So if you create a system managed identity, its lifecycle is always dependent on the lifecycle of the Azure resources to whom it is attached to. Okay, so for example, if you created a virtual machines and you have attached a system managed identity, so once the virtual machine is removed, the system managed identity also will be removed. Whereas user managed identity will stay forever as a resource unless you explicitly delete it or remove it. Now coming to a role or a role definition is a collection of permissions. Okay, so what is the permissions? Permissions means, for example, like you can read, write, or delete resources. Those are the permissions. Now role can be defined as an admin user. Okay, so which is nothing but an owner in Azure terminology, or can be a scoped role. Okay, scoped role in the sense like if you want to update something on a storage, you can have a storage contributor role, so that is more scope. Okay, now coming to what are types of role, there are two types of role: a built-in role and a custom role. So what is a built-in role? Built-in role comes with the Azure itself implicitly. Okay, where whereas custom role is a user defined role. Okay, so when you cannot deal with your requirement with only built-in role provided by Azure, then you can define your own custom role. So that is how you can define the types of a Azure role. Now coming to an example which I have taken from Microsoft, using the following link. uh, you can see a role definition here, and if you see, there are the left sides are divided into again built-in role and custom role. So built-in role, you can have owner, contributor, reader, whatever, operator, many more roles. Custom role, for example, here they have taken like or named is like reader support tickets, VM operator, those kind of role. And in the right side, you can see the definition of a role or the metadata of a role in the JSON format. So it has different parameters like actions, not actions, data actions, not data actions, assignable scopes, all these things. So actions are nothing but what you can do on top of a resource, okay, or on top of a data plan. No actions are what you cannot do. Similarly, for data actions, what you can do on the data level. For example, you want to write something or delete something from a storage account. So those are more on a data level. So data actions defines those. No data actions, what you cannot do on the data level. Assignable scopes, we'll discuss more on what is a scope, is more on Azure resource level, where it is applied to, at what level actually. Okay. Now coming to the scope, the same thing here, assignable scope. So let's discuss about scope. So role or role definition you can say, can be applicable or applied to a scope. Now scope is nothing but a layer within the Azure platform. Okay. So there are four type of layers or four type of scopes uh, that is there in Azure. The topmost is the management group, then subscription, then resource group, then resources. So the lowest level are the resources. Okay, resources can be app service, storage, whatever it is. Okay, Azure SQL, those are all resources. So in a nutshell, there are four layers or four scopes that happens in Azure. Now, once you have a role, once you have a role and you are clear about where it is applied to on a scope level, then there is a role assignment that needs to be done. Okay, so what is a assignment? Role assignment is a process of assigning a role to a user or a group of user or a service principal. Okay, so you have created a role, you have defined the metadata of a role. Now you have to assign that particular metadata to a user or a group or a service principal. So that is role assignment. Now granting and removing access to a particular scope is done by role assignment. We have already discussed. Now role assignments are transitive in nature. Okay, so what it means is, let's take an example. You have a resource group A. Within that group, you have two groups, group A, group B, but group B is also a part of group A. And then the lowest level is a user A, which is attached to group B. The highest level is resource group and lowest level is the user A. Now, if you are assigning a contributor access on the resource group A level, then what it means is the lowest level user A also will automatically get a contributor access. So that is the transitive in nature. Okay. Now, in the same role assignment, the another example is what will happen when you have multiple role assignment. Okay. So let's uh, let's start with the first case. Okay, where you have three layers or three scopes: subscription, resource group, resources. Now, a user gets a contributor access on the subscription level. This is the first example. Now, if you little bit tweak that particular scenario into second example is within the same setup, let's say the user gets a reader access on the resource group level. Okay, that is the second scenario. Now, what will happen to that particular user? So, because you have already given a contributor access on the highest level, which is the subscription, it always gets that priority. Okay, or the result will be the user will be having a contributor access finally. Okay, even if you have given the reader access on the resource group level is always, you know, it is a child, it is lower than the subscription level. So that is the reason, reason why the user will get a contributor access, because it is at the highest level on the subscription. So that is how it works. Now, if we try to combine everything into the fundamental of how RBAC works, then this is then in a nutshell the flow looks like this. Okay, so first, someone wants to access something on Azure, is a user, let's say, or a service principal, requests a token for Azure Resource Manager. So what Azure Resource Manager does, it start evaluating the role definition and assignments more on a metadata level, and then the comes up with the result of what the user can access or it cannot access. Okay, so that is what it does. Okay, so it do all the authentication matrix evaluation basically, in a way, if you want to say. Now, how it works. So basically, when user wants to talk to Azure for accessibility, then it it with a token, basically, with a access token, there is a REST API. Using a REST API, it goes to Azure Resource Manager. Okay. Now, what Azure Manager does for that particular user, it provides all details of role assignment. Okay, all the role assignment metadata. We have already discussed. In the metadata, you have scope, you have actions, data actions, no action, no data action. Okay, so it starts from the deny assignments box. Okay, so that is how it gets evaluated. And once deny assignments which the user cannot access, okay, then what will happen? The actions and no actions, or the data action and no data action, gets evaluated. Okay, now after that evaluation, effective permissions that can be granted to the user are determined. Okay, so how it get determines? So no actions data, no action metadata will always be subtracted from the action metadata, and that is the resultant value. Similarly, no data actions metadata will be subtracted from the data action metadata, and that is the resultant value, and that decides the effective permission that can be granted to that particular user. Okay, once that is done, then the scope evaluation comes into picture. So scope on what level? On management, on subscription, on resource group, on resources level, that gets evaluated, and finally those effective permission will be granted to that user on that scope level. Okay, or and finally, if there are any conditions that is present in the metadata, that also get evaluated, and the accessibility will be decided accordingly. So that is how it works. So fundamentally, if you see, it is the evaluation of a set of metadata. It is the and that set of metadata is an assignment to a specific user. Okay, and that set of the set of assignments are nothing but the set of roles that defines the whole RBAC concepts, or the RBAC fundamentals. uh, I hope this session will help you more on a fundamental level on how a user or a technical user, whatever you can say, or a group, can have an access to the Azure resources on different scope level. So if you want to learn more about this, please follow this link from Microsoft. I have also taken all the idea from this particular link when I was designing this particular session, and this really helps me a lot. And that's it. Thank you and have a great day.